Hey, everybody. My name is Todd Cochran. Of course, I want to thank Charles and the team from DragonCon for having me on the panel or having me do a panel. And actually, this is not a panel. This is just going to be me going solo today. And I've got a lot to share with you here over the next 50 minutes or so. And I think what you're going to find is that just like the history of podcasting panel that was on earlier today, and some of that discussion, I'm going to do a little bit of time machine. We're going to walk back a little bit, and we're going to talk about the podcasting space in general. And this session is entitled RSS in a modern era. And what I'm going to do through the magic of the TriCaster here, I'm just going to go ahead and flip over it and put my presentation on the screen. And one thing I noticed today, the tech was a little. My tech, it's not Charles's tech. My tech's a little slow, so. If the screen is a few seconds to update, and I'm moving fast, I apologize, but it's a lot of one-liners on these slides. But hey, so just give you a little bit of background here. I've been podcasting since October 2004. I was fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time and wrote the first book on podcasting in March of 2005, and it did about 45,000 copies. It was a #1 bestseller in the New York Times and did the Amazon in its early days. It got some awards. So I got some dinners and some steak and stuff like that. It was kind of cool. And actually you made some money in that book, but it's quite dated because it came out before podcasting was even talked about by Apple. And of course that didn't happen until July of 2005. But my show was also my personal show. Geek News Central was one of the first shows sponsored in podcasting, and they're still my sponsor today, thank goodness. And that's a whole conversation in itself. I was inducted in the Podcast Hall of Fame in 2015, and I'm involved in a variety of podcasts, along with being the founder of Blueberry Podcasting. So Geek News Central is that's where it all started. Podcast Insider is a official company podcast by Blueberry. The new media show I do with Rob Greenlee, who's a VP over at Libsyn. Him and I, two competitors, do a show together at newmediashow.com. We always say that you can get a PhD in podcasting if you go over there. And Podcast Legends is a pod-fated podcast. So each one of us has to have at least one of those in the space. So, again, who am I? What have I done? Well, I've done about 2,000 combined episodes with all the stuff I've done and over 1,000 video interviews. I go to events like the Consumer Electronics Show and NAB to provide supplement content for my tech show. And also, some of you are aware of this, but I'm also the founder of the People's Choice Podcast Awards. We're actually in final voting right now at podcastawards.com, and co-founder of the Tech Podcast Network. Oh, I guess I bragged about my book writing twice, so need to edit that slide. But what I want to do here is give you guys some reflection on how the podcasting space is, why it's as valuable as it is. There's been a lot of conversation happen in the last couple of weeks talking about podcasting. We know that Joe Rogan's going to be going over to Spotify exclusive. They didn't move over all of his episodes yet, so there's some controversy there. There's a new project coming from Adam Curry, which we'll talk about in a minute, talking about Podcast 2.0. So there's a lot of initiatives right now that is related to this topic that I'm going to talk about in this presentation. And I think what I want all of you to do is really kind of think about podcasting as this bigger thing about media creation. And also to consider that while we're streaming today on Twitch, you can do Facebook Live, you can do YouTube Live, you can do all this live stuff. But in the end, the podcast, and maybe, you can do video podcasting as well, can be distributed in a way that protects you as a creator. But let's go and talk a little bit about history. We're going to go all the way back to 2004 when podcasting first kicked off. It was truly at that point, I guess what I would consider to be a revolution in the making. There was no iPhone. There were just basic rudimentary MP3 players at that point. And the iPod. I've got a little, here's a reminder on my desk, or actually on the top of my screen over there. It's a little MP3 recorder that I used years ago. I think it holds about 12 episodes. That's about it. But really, this device was what really kind of started the whole process that makes podcasting what it is today. So the two gentlemen that'll appear on your screen here in a second, as soon as my computer catches up, is Adam Curry and Dave Weiner. Adam Curry is the one that is really the one that has been recognized the most as being, the kind of the guy that's been called the Podfather. But without Dave Weiner in the RSS 2.0 spec with the enclosure tag, podcasting would not have really evolved and done what it's done. But I think the thing to think about was in the early days of podcasting was a much, much, much different place in the way content was being created, and really had this rebel radio type of feeling. Because remember, this is pre-Facebook, this is pre-Twitter. MySpace was going through, it was online, and we'd seen the takedown of sites that were doing MP3 sharing, and there was lots of what I like to call gatekeepers. But creators had really, really strong opinions on the space. You do it for the art. You do it because you love creating content. You don't go after to make money. That was kind of the idea in the early days, and being able to have a place to really have this unique way to get podcast or distribution of content was unheard of in 2004. As we consider today, everything's on our mobile phones, but then you consumed on your desktop and or a laptop at really slow internet speeds. And at the same time, when you left the house, you had a flip phone. You didn't have a smartphone. So there was really no way to take that content with you. And I know that we're prior to 10 o'clock here, so I have to be careful what I say today, but it was really the beat the man attitude. That was really what the podcasting space really started. We were really like, double barrel shotgun, beat the man. We really did not like the mainstream. We liked being unique and on our own. And largely because at that time there was gatekeepers. The gatekeepers owned media distribution. You had NBC, Fox, CBS, ABC, Clear Channel, Salem Radio Network. And that list could include Microsoft. It could the list goes on. You did not, absolutely did not, in no certain way, get your media into major distribution points without basically signing your life away to one of these entities or others. So this is what really, in 2004, really changed things. There was no YouTube. It really, really changed things. I was at a conference shortly after podcasting kicked off, and I was kind of naive to a certain extent. I had thought that podcasting would be great for channel 600 on your local cable network. I thought it'd be cool to get a cable channel and basically play podcast on it 24/7. And I asked a question at a conference, how do you do that? And the corporate executive he stared down his nose at me and he said, young man, and I was in my 30s at the time, young man, 10 years and $10 million. Well, that's previous slide. It said, beat the man. That was kind of going through my mind when he said that. But I kind of had the realization at that point, we don't need them. We didn't need them. I shouldn't have asked the question. It was a dumb question to ask because we had global distribution without asking permission of anyone. There was a podcast that Adam Curry was doing. It was called The Daily Source Code. And he entered, it was a great intro, probably one of the greatest intros of a podcast even to this day. And part of it was $16 million worth of airplanes strapped to my ass and the next generation of radio content in my ears. I'd like to think I'm flying into the future. So what he was really referring to in this comment was he's in his airplane. He's listening to podcast while he's flying. And he's thinking this is the way ahead. It was truly remarkable because you got on an airplane. You didn't take podcasts with you. You plugged into the seat and listen to what the pre-programmed content the airlines provided to you. You were able to take podcasts with you in your car. You were able to take podcasts with you on a run, going to the gym, even though we had these initial introduction devices like the iPod and the little players, the iRiver. Google that. It was really truly a remarkable period. And a lot of people like to call podcasting was a revolution. I call it an evolution. It really changed the way people thought about the media distribution on both the audio and video side. Remember, podcasting can be a dual experience. It can be audio and video, not live, but what we're recording today could actually be put out as a podcast. And that's something I do with my own show for about the last 10 years. I do an audio and video version. So anyway, what we've really had here was the podcasting space was a total evolution. But the most important takeaway that I have realized really over the past 15 years, and I'll be 16 years as a podcaster come October, is what we have is very, very precious. It's something that's unique because we avoided the suits. We avoided content lockup. Most of us avoided signing contracts and signing our lives away. What we have is very, 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 very precious. And as I get into this just a little bit more, I want you to think about what we see today in wherever media is being distributed, whether it be YouTube, on Twitch, or if it's on Facebook, or wherever it is, as we continue the context of this discussion. I want you to keep coming back and think about podcasting and what we have is precious. And I'm going to get into that in a very deep way. This symbol, well, some of you can't see it yet. The RSS symbol, which most people they have no clue what that really means today, and nor do we want them to have to know what that means today. The RSS symbol is basically, generally that's linked to an XML file with all kinds of basically markup in it that the average person sees that and their eyes glaze over. But to me, this symbol is something that has truly been revolutionary for us to be able to have the ability to build and control and distribute media. And there's a term I've come up with, and I think this is something that I hope carries over as you've listened to this today. RSS is the great equalizer. And you think, well, what does that mean, Todd? It's the great equalizer. What does that really, really mean? Well, it boils down to this. It's an open ecosystem. As much as Spotify and Pandora and iHeart and all these other companies wish to lock up podcast content, they can't. It's an open ecosystem. It's open. And matter of fact, Adam Curry's getting ready to do something podcast 2.0 to try to protect the open ecosystem. I've been working with a group of people on something we call the RSS Coalition, where we've had members from Apple, we've had members from Pandora, we've had podcasters, we have had creators talking about how do we protect and keep the podcasting space open and don't allow this thing that we built to become closed and behind paywalls. Another thing that's special, where RSS is a great equalizer, is that we have global distribution. For the first time, someone in India could listen to a podcast that was created in the United Kingdom, or I could listen to a show that was created in Australia and listen to in America. Generally, we do not, unless you pay a lot of money, if you're on the television, you don't see Australian TV. Indians don't see American TV unless it's some sort of syndicated content. We don't have this cross information of news and information. That's something that is absolutely almost equivocally unique and is a great equalizer in podcasting. You can listen to anything from any country, anywhere, through your mobile device, through your computer. There's global distribution of content that is unique. Now, of course, there's some stuff that's going to be on YouTube that you're going to be able to get from other countries and so forth. But if you want to go down a line and get specific content week after week, month after month from a specific source, this is unique in its space, and basically it's open. You can get content from anywhere. And most importantly, is that you can hear that content anywhere. Did I say that right? Or I can distribute it anywhere. And podcast immortality is the open RSS feed. There are a lot of people, you'll see articles from time to time, people talking about, we want to move on from RSS. We want to do something different. And whenever someone says that, I get a little bit like, what is your agenda? You know, I'll be frank. I'm a business owner. I have around 80,000 different podcasters we work with on a multitudes of levels. I have an agenda as a business owner to make money, to get new subscribers. But fundamentally, I'm a podcaster, and I also know that the reason we're successful is that independent content creators, someone as simple, someone in their closet doing a show, to someone in a production studio, maybe kind of like this, can do an absolute great podcast. Or maybe in this studio, maybe I'm doing a sucky podcast. Who knows? But the main thing is it's open, and no one can tell me no. And that's the main difference here. And we're going to get into some of those topics on why this is critically important in the times that we live today. And here is going to sum this up in a single statement. We, that being podcasters, cannot be taken off the air. And I want to go back, and I want to give an example. And it's one that may piss some of you off. You may question. So I think we've all heard the creator Alex Jones. I think we've all heard about some of the content he's created could be on the edge of being incendiary, or there's a whole host of things that he does, and he pushes the boundaries every single day. And some of those shows, Apple and others, felt that he went over those boundaries, and they delisted him. They took his show off Apple Podcasts. It took off all the major distribution platforms. But it goes back to what I just said, in that we cannot be taken off the air because, and he couldn't be taken off the air, whether you like it or not, is because guess what? He had his own website, had his own RSS feed, hosted his media on his own. No one could take him off the air. They could take him out of distribution points. But he still today is doing a show. His audience is still subscribed, whether you like it or not. And for me, freedom of speech has consequences if you say something you shouldn't, but that's a personal responsibility. And if he says something that gets himself in trouble and someone files a lawsuit against him or goes after him for defamation or labels him a certain way, that's his problem. That's not my problem. But the main thing is he's still on. And there's other content creators now. And matter of fact, this last week, we worked with a content creator that has a show that I would consider to be pretty right of center. And his show has apparently got ghosted. And we're helping him try to get his show. He's got all control. We're trying to figure out why it's happened without him getting notifications and so forth. So there's a lot of stuff happening in the world today where voices are being devoiced. And in podcasting, that is not possible. But it does matter, where does your show live? In other words, where is your podcast at? And I'm going to go into that more here in a moment. But if you're a podcaster today, you need to think about, where does your show live? Where is my podcast? And am I at risk from folks like modern gatekeepers? So let's talk about modern gatekeepers. And this doesn't make me a very popular person. I've given this presentation now for about 9 months. I think you're the third or fourth audience I've given this to, and I always get major feedback from people. So who is a modern gatekeeper here in 2020? Well, the biggest one is Facebook. I think we've all seen things that Facebook has done to take content down that you may agree or disagree with. They've taken opinions down, especially in the world of COVID we live in right now, right? Say something wrong, you get flagged. So Facebook is probably right now, from a content standpoint, whether it be written, spoken, or video, they're probably the biggest one going after content that they feel, again, that Facebook has determined, and I'll say it again, that Facebook has determined not to fall within their community guidelines. And oftentimes people end up in Facebook jail. And Facebook jail sucks because Facebook jail puts you in a timeout for a couple of weeks. And let's say you're doing business over there, and that's where your followers are, or where your media is. And when you go into Facebook jail, guess what you are? You're non-existent. So I always tell people, you're building content online and your major place for reaching the audience is Facebook. Be careful, because if you get put in Facebook jail, or worse, get slapped with a couple of Facebook community standards, and after a couple of slaps of Facebook community standards, you could actually lose your Facebook account. They do cancel people's accounts. You do realize that, right? So you may not have the ability to ever again reach your audience if you get enough Facebook community standard strikes against you. Who's another modern gatekeeper? Well, Twitter. My gosh, And regardless of your political leanings, what are they doing now? They're taking down posts by political folks that they don't feel are right, or little mistruth. And yet they want to have protection as not being an editor. And groups like Twitter and Facebook, it's their day of reckoning is coming, because they can't have their cake and eat it too. So again, another modern gatekeeper, Instagram. And they're another one. You put something on Instagram that they don't like, they take it down. You have no choice. You have to eat it or try to repost it in a different way. Spotify, well, what has just happened? They just signed Joe Rogan, and they moved his files over. But what they didn't do is they didn't move 8, 9, 10, 12 of his controversial shows. So they have applied, it appears, at least on the surface, that they have applied editorial control on his content. And this has gotten a lot of play lately. Or if you don't create content that kind of lines up with Spotify's values, all of a sudden you find your show no longer on Spotify. And if you dare play music on your show, well, you're headed for the graveyard with that. Spotify will delist your show. Pandora's been very, very slow to add new shows to their directory. People have waited 5, 6 months to be listed on Pandora. There's still people waiting. So they're being very selective on who they allow onto their platform. Again, a modern gatekeeper. iHeart. Oh my God. iHeart, they have their own podcast awards where they basically just pat each other on the back. They promote their own content. Yeah, you can be on iHeart. Good luck getting any listens over there. But they call themselves the biggest podcast directory in the world, which is wrong. But they make that claim. You say it long enough, it becomes true. And you train the general public to stop listening the way they have been, going over and listening on iHeart, which then becomes a managed experience for listeners. Do we like managed experiences for listeners? Do we like our listeners being directed to content that Pandora, iHeart, all these other companies think you should listen to? Are you starting to feel my vibe here a little bit? Luminary, they tried a new model. They tried locking stuff up behind a paywall. They want you to do the Netflix model. Well, they're burning cash at like $4 to $5 million a month. Their burn rate is incredible. Their days are numbered. Hey, if they'd have gave me $120 million or $140 million, we could have done incredible things and brought more value to the podcasting community instead of trying to lock up content that they pay dearly for, and they're not getting this reaction. Luckily, on this case, the gatekeepers kind of stubbed their toe, and basically the audience has said, no, we're going to vote by going and listening to other content. Now, probably the biggest one, my God, the biggest gatekeeper out there is YouTube. And I have videos on YouTube. I've got 700 videos on YouTube. Do I have a big audience on YouTube? Nah, 3,000, 4,000 followers or something, or subscribers. I don't get a lot of views on YouTube, but some people do. And a lot of people invest a lot of time, money, effort to build massive audiences over there, only to be demonetized. You know, literally millions of YouTube creators were monetized. Or worse, they said something and social justice warriors went after them. And guess what they did? They demonetized. They weren't necessarily demonetized by YouTube, but they made the advertisers scared to be in the content. And finally, I think the last one I have here is live platforms. We're up on Twitch today. I think we all can agree Twitch is a great platform. It reaches a great medium of people. But I'm also on YouTube Live. I'm on Facebook Live. I'm on Twitter Live. Used to be on Mixer, but that's gone. They shut that one down. So I've got a variety of places that I'm live. But I'm live for that period of time. And yet I want the live interaction on those platforms. But in the end, in my podcast, I tell them, hey, come back to Geek News Central. Come back to my homepage. You'll find the video. You'll find the audio. You can subscribe. I call Geek News Central Moonbase Alpha. It's kind of a weird saying. People laugh when I call it that. But Moonbase Alpha is like home. If you were living on the moon, you would go out and do different things. But every night you'd come back to Moonbase Alpha. And that's what I tell my audience. Come back to Moonbase Alpha. Come back to Geek News Central. Come back, interact with me on my.com, on my brand. Get served my advertising. Get served my content. Sure, I want you to experience the show wherever you may find it, but in the end, come back to home to mama. Come back to the main site. And this has been a strategy that I have been used for a very, very long time and building a show of my own, primarily for this reason. We cannot be taken off the air. Now, if I fail to pay the domain name, if I fail to pay the hosting bill, well, that's my fault. And then I lose because I was being an idiot. But otherwise, I control everything. And no one can take me off there. They can take me off YouTube. They can take me off Facebook. They can take me all those other locations. But my audience knows to come back to my website. Sure, while I'm on YouTube and Facebook and all those other places, I want them to consume it there. But for the day I say something stupid and have a social justice warrior campaign made against me and get delisted, and maybe it'll never happen. But guess what? I'm not taking that chance because right now I can't be taken off the air. And here's another thing. We can't be demonetized. Well, they go complain to my sponsor about me, but they can't take money. I'm not expecting any money from YouTube or Twitch or no one. That's not where I build revenue. I build revenue through a PayPal link on my website. Some people do it through Patreon. I can't be demonetized unless something of my own fault. I can't be demonetized because someone says, oh, they need 1 million listener hours before they can get monetized. Or a change of policy. Oops, these types of shows are not going to be monetized because it's not brand safe. Brands decide if they want to work with me through my website, and then the content goes everywhere else. So I can't be demonetized in a true sense of the world. And here's the most important thing. I cannot be censored. There is no censorship. I can say what I want to say. Granted, that is going to have consequences if I say something, right? But YouTube's not going to take my content down. They may take it down on YouTube, but it's still going to be on Geek News Central. I can't be censored. And that's a beautiful thing. And that's one of the reasons why podcasting is special. Again, it comes back to, though, where does your show live? Who do you work with? And more importantly, on a positive note, let me talk just a little bit about podcast gives a voice. And this to me is the most important part of podcasting. When podcasting kicked off in 2004, the LGBTQIA plus, and I apologize if I missed some letters there, they were in the podcasting space immediately because they knew they could have a voice here. Now, last year at DragonCon, I sat in the back of Charles's room and I listened to a group, was primarily a group of people of color, that were discussing the challenges that they were having in getting their voice heard. An example was they were doing a protest, peaceful protest, and the news truck rolls up. News truck gets out with a camera, and they walk over and talk to someone, not a person of color, to ask them about the protest. And they're like, what's going on, mainstream media? Why are you talking to him instead of talking to me? And what they have found, what groups, people that don't have a voice, people that are scared to do like live video, this type of thing, podcasting gives them an outlet to build their audience, to say what they want to say, to have their voices heard. It's very, very powerful. And they cannot be silenced. They can't be censored. They get global distribution. This is unique to podcasting. Yeah, they can put it up on YouTube, but will it be found? Will YouTube suppress the content? Will Facebook make it not found in a newsfeed? Will Facebook ban a group? It goes on and on. It all comes back together. So what podcasting really is, above all mediums, is true freedom of the press. You put something on YouTube and you're reporting on something, there's no guarantee that video is going to stay up. You report on something going on. So here's an example. I was not seeing anything about what was going on in Portland. Nothing. Wasn't seeing anything going on with protests in other areas. But what did I find? I found snippets of videos on podcasts that were being put up. Because when those snippets of content went up in different areas, it was being suppressed and you couldn't find the information. You couldn't find the video clips. Maybe you went to TikTok or something like that and dug around, did some keyword searches. It was hard to find. So podcasting is the ability of people worldwide to have true freedom of the press. Hong Kong. Lots of podcasts have come out of Hong Kong over the situation in Hong Kong and the annexation of the Chinese and what they've done. People in Hong Kong are creating podcasts. They're putting them on American servers like our company, Blueberry, Libsyn, Podbean, all the other ones that are out there. They're getting the word out, bypassing the Great Firewall of China. And because they have a little bit more freedom at this point still, that content is getting out and being able to be consumed by people in Hong Kong. Can they produce that and put that up in Hong Kong? No. With new laws in place right now, they can be arrested. Me, as an American citizen, if I talk a lot of smack about China and I go hub through Hong Kong and I'm on a list that from the Chinese of having said disparaging things about China, I can get rolled up as an American citizen today. I will never hub through Hong Kong. On my personal show, I talk about the things China do all the time in not a positive light. So podcasting is the true freedom of press. And probably the most important thing too here is that for many folks, it's a safe place to share. It's a safe place, a safe space to create a anonymous name and be able to talk about things that you would not be able to talk about in real life under the cover of audio. Yeah, your voice might be detected at some point, but it's a much safer space to share things than really almost any other media points. And again, the most important part about everything that I've talked about today so far is that you're able to reach a global community. You're able to get your word out. It's we're able to access content. Now, you're all going to say, "Oh, Todd. I can hear about all this stuff on Facebook. I can see all this stuff on YouTube. I can see all this stuff wherever." But are you really? Are you really? I personally, yeah, I use Facebook. I'm on it daily, but I don't trust it in the least because the message is being massaged by a corporate entity. It's not by an independent content creator. So this is the thing again. We go back to the core of what makes podcasting really, really special is we can reach this global economy. And the best part of it is there's zero to low cost to start podcasting. If you have no money, you have no budget, but you've got a mobile device, you can go over to Anchor and start a show for free. If you have a small budget, as low as $5, $10, $12, $20 a month, you can start a show on almost every single podcast hosting platform in existence. And then if you get tired of doing your show, there's lots of places to put the media later if you wanted to have it archived. So this is the most important thing too. For the first time, now, some of you are going to say, "Hey, I can create a YouTube video. I'm just going to do my camera." Yep, you sure can. Low cost to start. So there's no, that's a parallel that is correct. But I'll go back again and say, you're on YouTube, you're renting space on YouTube, even though you're not paying them. And I would rather build my brand than build YouTube's brand. I'm kind of big on that if you haven't figured it out already. But again, RSS, that symbol truly, truly, truly is something that is quite remarkable. Considering back in 2004, Adam Curry said, "I just want a new way to get content into an iPod so I can listen to it when I walk out the door." And he built a simple script back in that early starting of those days where he had to hook his iPod up via serial cable. And then about 2:00 in the morning while he was sleeping, his podcatcher would pull down all the new media that was out there through these RSS feeds, and it would sync it to his iPod, and he would walk out the door in the morning with 20 fresh podcasts to listen to. Now, today, we've got mobile devices, right? And the scene's changed a little bit. We don't care how people listen. We really don't. If they listen on YouTube, they listen on Facebook, if they listen on my website, if they listen to Overcast, if they use Pocket Cast, if they use Google Podcasts, they use Apple Podcasts, I don't care how they listen. And as a matter of fact, thank God we've got these smart home devices, our smart home devices, smartphones. I think there's 120 different ways you can listen to a podcast today. Magic word to launch your smart home device, play the podcast and say a name, and you'll 9 out of 10 times it'll start. Automatically subscribe, I'll make download, I can listen on the airplane. But again, for us today, we just consume the media. But the magic is because of this. This is why we can still do this. And we don't have to ask permission. We don't have to have $10 million in 10 years. It's really, truly the major difference of why podcasting is truly special. And I really like this statement. We don't need any stinking gatekeepers. We really don't. But there is, little by little, chunks being taken away and attempts to put this content underneath the control of major mega corporations. Now, I got news for them. It ain't going to happen. Not while I'm breathing. It's not going to happen where about 100,000 or 200 or 300,000 independent podcast creators who are creating their content for fun, for their business, independently, they're not going to allow it to happen. There is going to be some networks that are going to sign exclusive deals and get big checks. And I say, if you get a deal to get a big check, you make sure you get a lawyer and read that contract, and then go and sign that and cash that big check. This goes right back. There's a YouTube video that anyone that's creating content, podcast today, needs to listen to. It's Joe Budden says, "Why I'm leaving Spotify." You want to listen to the hour and 54-minute version of that. And there's a lot of fun. There's a lot of discussions, but there's some huge takeaways in that conversation where he signed a contract, he got paid, didn't get a bonus, didn't get what he thought he was going to get, but it's just lessons learned. There's a takeaway there for everybody. He's a big show. He made good money. He's going to be successful. Some people say he was crying. I don't care if you think he was crying, but there's a message there for content creators as they're creating content. Ownership and control of where your show lives and how it's broadcast through your RSS feed is really, 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 really important, because my company largely services indie podcasters. Our dollars and cents and what my salary is paid from independent podcast creators that are using our service, but we are here to serve them and make sure they're protected. So this is why I'm so passionate about RSS and keeping the space open. I'm not crying wolf. Nothing's happening tomorrow. Nothing's happening next week, next year, but it's something we have to be reminded what we built in 2004 to create what is absolutely unique in the media space today. It's absolutely unique. And every one of us has at least one story of a creator that's gotten screwed by some major gatekeeper, or you know of someone, and maybe it's happened to you. So this is why you need to be careful of who you partner with in podcasting. Make sure it's a partner you can trust. I would say about 95% of the podcasting service providers out there are folks that you can trust. There's one in particular, I won't name by name, I don't trust. And that's just me. And I'll leave it up to you to kind of go through and look at who you're doing business with if you're a podcaster. There's lots of great companies doing lots of great things. But just remember, someone has a change in business model and they say, oh, we don't need this type of content anymore, or this type of content's costing us too much money, or we think this content isn't a good fit for our platform, and removes you, which is happening. Make sure you're careful who you partner with in podcasting. And I've been saying this for 15 years, almost 16 years. Your show on your.com. That's the most simple thing. That's the first step. Your brand is built on your.com. Your IP is controlled on your.com. Your rules. So whatever I've just said, here's the thing. There are no rules in podcasting. You need to take everything I've just talked about today and say, he's an idiot. That's your choice. This is my opinion, because in podcasting, there's no rules. It's your rules. We can only give advice. And I think that's another thing that's cool. Isn't it cool we don't have to ask permission? Don't have to ask permission to run that article. Don't have to have permission to talk badly about a company. Isn't it nice to not have rules? Now you have to do it within constraints and making sure you're not libeling someone and making sure it's in your opinion and, some kind of common, words you use when you're reporting on stuff or talking about things. But the main thing is it's your rules. So that's my presentation today in RSS in a Modern Era. I know that we've got a whole bunch of stuff in the chat room that has been pasted over. And let me go up here and read what we've got. Question, can you comment on the benefits of podcasting and streaming and how they complement each other? Oh, I think they're fantastic together. I absolutely Here's one thing. Here's what I've said. I was on 6 years into podcasting, so that would have been about 2000. No, 2010. Duh. 2010. I decided to do video. I had no clue. I did a tech show. I talked for 70 minutes. I wanted to do it just as an experiment to see how many people would do it. So I was using Ustream at the time, and there was a few people, and I was in Hawaii, so people were coming in from Australia and other places watching me on Ustream, and it gave me the ability to have a little interaction with the audience. So for me, that's what live really kind of did. Also, live made me a better podcaster. Live made me be able to have a more planned show, because you're doing video, you get one shot, right? Especially if you're live, you screw up. Yeah, you can edit the video and post, but you're going to look like an idiot when you're live. So live made me a better video. I think they're a great compliment. I really, really do. I've done it for 10 plus years here already. I've done 9, getting ahead of myself, doing live. And it's just that little interaction with, the people that pop in. It's the same thing in Twitch, right? Getting some interaction with people coming in. But then if you capture that video or just put it out as an audio, it's great. But the thing to remember, if you're going to do live, 80% of my audience is audio only. So when I describe something that they can't see, guess what? They send me emails pissed off. What were you talking about? What were you showing? How come you didn't describe it? So that's the only pitfall of live. Gatekeepers are huge value. They keep the crap out of the world. They keep the crap out of the world that they want to keep out of the world. They focus the message that they want. I would say absolutely that isn't. You have your great for your opinion, but gatekeepers. What if you were told your content can't be anywhere? You can't be on Twitch. Your content sucks. What if you were told that? What if you're told on YouTube, your content sucks, you can't be on YouTube? You wouldn't like a gatekeeper so much. While I understand you don't like the gatekeepers, how do you reconcile the additional exposure you've gotten from those gatekeepers? I'm not saying the exposure isn't bad. No, don't get me wrong. I'm good on Facebook. I'm good on YouTube. The point is, I can be all those places, but in the end, I'm back on my own website. I'm at geeknewscentral.com. I'm on podcastinsider.com. I'm on newmediashow.com. And every one of my listeners knows where that website is, where that content is. I have my advertising, all that stuff there. I love the exposure I get everywhere else. But I'm just telling you, if you become the next Alex Jones and you become the pariah, and I'm not endorsing his content, just so we're clear, you become the next pariah. You become the next target of a social justice campaign. You're still on the air, baby. You're still good. They can't shut you down. That's the main thing here. Gatekeeper could also be another way, say content curation. If they don't think your ideas blend with the rest of their brand, they're fully within their rights to remove the content. Free speech prevents the government from going after you, but private companies are free to nicer. Absolutely. Sure. Absolutely they are. But does that serve you well as a consumer of content? Again, I'll go back to the analogy. What if someone doesn't like this program on Twitch and Twitch says, I don't want DragonCon to be on Twitch, and they pull the plug midstream? I'm not saying they're going to do that, but that's a hypothetical. It could happen to someone comes on here and says something, does something. Charles has got a pretty tight rein on the group here, but there's always one outlier that says something. You get this shock. You're like, oh my God, am I going to be affected? Am I going to get a strike for this? So again, it's about going back to being able to control your stuff. If you're not a creator and you're just a consumer, I think that a lot of consumers right now are sheep. I think they're being fed stuff by these companies that they want fed to them. People don't believe there's shadow banning going on. You think shadow banning is just against conservatives? It's happening to liberals. It's happening to people of color. It's happening to LGBTQIA+. It's happening to all of them. Yet, everyone says there's no shadow banning going on, where there absolutely is. And final couple ones here. Can't Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, etc. also take part in the same kind of messaging suppression that YouTube might? Or is the argument that advertisers have less input than they would somehow like on YouTube? I think Apple Podcasts has already voted with they taking some shows down. I think that some of the syndication sites are suppressing messages now by content that doesn't fall within their company's guidelines. I think some of that's happening already. And the Crucible says the trouble thing about this panel, frankly, is the concept of being an either or decision. That's just simply not the case. Podcasting is good. Streaming is good. Spotify, YouTube, Facebook is good. They all have advantages and disadvantages. So, hey, they do. You're right. It's not an all or nothing. I'm just telling you, if you're a podcaster, protect your brand, protect your IP, protect your feed. That's all I'm saying. And we should be very happy that RSS is an open space. So I think I got to the end, Charles. And I'm troubled that you say it's disturbing. I'm not disparaging. I'm just warning you.
Go ahead and tell them where they can find you, Todd.
Yeah, so if you have comments on this, Todd at blueberry.com. If you want to come over and check out Blueberry as a podcasting host, blueberry.com is our location. You can use the promo code founder, get a free 30-day trial. I don't know if I'm allowed to pitch. I'm sorry if I'm not. Again, I guess that's it. If you want to watch my personal show, geeknewscentral.com. Newmediashow.com is probably the show if you want to really get more depth on what's going on in podcasting on a day-to-day basis with all the different players. And we have a variety of guests that come on as well. So newmediashow.com.